Thank you, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to this press conference. We're here to talk about the Bermuda economy. And there's been really no time in the last 60 years that Bermuda has faced a more serious economic outlook. We've witnessed a general deterioration in our economic strengths and contractions in key foreign exchange earning businesses. We are experiencing widespread joblessness and facing long-term unemployment. Whole sectors of the economy are in jeopardy. The situation is quite dire. We are on the cusp of a national economic emergency. And my concern now is that conditions are likely to get worse before they get better. In about 2 weeks' time, the government will bring forward its 2011-2012 budget. Again, there is no time in recent history where more rests on the leadership and example by the Bermuda government than in this upcoming budget. And so I want to use this afternoon's conference to lay down some basic steps we need to take to set this country back on a path of recovery. We want to secure people's support for what I believe are the tough corrective measures that need to be taken to provide the government with a better direction than it has shown to date. We entered this budget building process believing that everyone needs to think about the first thing they need to put Bermuda first. Do whatever they do that is necessary to get Bermuda back on a course of growth, jobs, income, and confidence. Now I'll speak about some principles to help guide government thinking and to guide everyone's thinking on how we should go about doing this, and the detail of this will be outlined in my budget reply on February 18th. And after that, we'll do some Q&A. And one of the first principles, I think, is that we need to reduce the cost of government. Now, over the past few weeks, we have seen government ask workers to agree to overtime pay bans to help cut the cost and keep costs under control. To sacrifice, essentially, ask the workers to sacrifice for the greater good. Now, we think it's only fair, and fairness is an important issue when it comes to public matters. We think it's fair that government ministers also step up to the wicket to sacrifice for the greater good. And so we are calling on the Premier to impose a pay cut for government ministers. Now I would say between 10 and 15% pay cut for government ministers. A pay cut would signal an all-important commitment to shared sacrifice. Now when we talk about leadership by example, this is where leadership by example really counts. This is where the rubber meets the road insofar as leadership by example. There's been a lot of lip service to leadership by example, but this is a point where government can actually show it. One of the things that they have to deal with is a lot of problems that the government has actually created themselves. So it seems only appropriate that the government show some sacrifice on their own account. Now, the cutting government spending is an imperative. The finance minister and premier has said that she will cut $150 million from the budget. One thing that I want to say here is that if $150 million is cut from planned capital expenditures or expenditures down the road, that is not what we should be looking for. We should be looking for cuts of money that is currently being spent. not cuts of money that we would have spent. So that's an important thing to look for. Now, the options for the Bermuda government to actually stimulate the local economy are very limited, in my opinion. So we should look at some of the little things that can be done. I think everybody who has business with the government knows that they take their time to pay their bills. They pay their bills, but they take a long time to pay those bills. But it'll be a good idea and a stimulating type of activity for government to try to pay its bills in 30 days, like the private sector generally requires you to do. Also, to direct 20% of government business to small business to help stimulate them. And it's no secret that small businesses are really suffering mightily under this current recession. One of the impediments to private sector stimulation is the Department of Planning. I said this in my budget speech last year, and we are reiterating it this year, that we need to streamline Department of Planning, because the quicker applications go through the Department of Planning, the quicker those plans can be turned into real work in the construction industry. So time is important here, and the Department of Planning is part of the problem. Now, we have talked a lot about the government debt, and that is a big issue. We challenge government to provide Bermuda with a 5-year plan to reduce debt. Not just talk about it as a by-the-way thing, or debt that becomes a consequence of overspending or trying to justify the level of debt, which is mainly what the minister has done for the last 3 years, to just justify the level of debt. Bermuda needs a 5-year plan on how the government's going to reduce debt. And lastly, and I think perhaps most importantly, and I think Jean wants to talk about this as well, is that Bermuda needs to change the way it does business. We have to, A, recognize who our customers are. B, we have to figure out what it is they want from us. And C, we have to figure out how we deliver those services, because we're in the service business. We have to figure out how we deliver those services in the most efficient and cost-effective manner. Steps towards that will be a huge stimulus for the Bermuda economy and a way for us to move forward in the longer term. So we will talk about these things in more detail during the budget debate, but those are the sort of markers that I would like to put down now. I'll turn it over to Jean, because I know she wants to say something before we go into